You don't know it yet, but this activity is actually helping you write the first part of your introduction, known as the overview. And so, there are a couple of things that I want you to do, but I'd like you to do them in point form because I don't want writing to be a barrier for you. So, you will have to draft a title for your proposal, but do that after you've done the work. What I would suggest actually is go into something like ChatGPT or Gemini after you look at this title guide, because that's kind of important, and ask it to generate like 10 different titles that you can kind of play with because the title is so important to your research endeavor. People do that last, and it's a mistake because the title just gives you this sort of overall purpose. It kind of states the purpose. So, the one section you want to look at first is the definition of key terms. Now, I don't mean if you're talking about K to 12 education, we know what that is, or learning, we know what that is. But for example, if you're looking at generative artificial intelligence, you want to define that and so you want to look up definitions for that. You want to have citations, preferably peer reviewed citations about possible definitions and perhaps examples of what they are. So, but do this in point form, okay? And then your citation would be in brackets. And then you want to talk about why your problem is important. It really is. It's critical to understand what you're doing and why it makes a difference. And usually, why it makes a difference has to be more than at your specific school, for example, or your specific classroom. So we're not just looking at, I'm just going to give you Gen AI example. We're not looking at generative AI simply in my kindergarten class because that suits me, but we're looking at the use of Gen AI in elementary school classrooms by teachers, for example. And then, so why is that important? Well, there's lots of reasons that it could be important. It is a tool that's rapidly progressing, for one, and there may be there's certain needs in education that aren't being met, say personalized needs that are very, very difficult. So teachers' time is so valuable, and Gen AI can help with that time. I'm just riffing here. There's lots of things that could be important. But once you play with Notebook LM, you can start to ask these questions, and you can also go into your chatbot and you can ask it to say, well, what are some key reasons? And I need some resources. So you got to dig in there. So we're going to put that in point form here, these key reasons and with citations. Okay. So basically, you're making this story up to convince me to give you $100,000 to do this research. So you have to be, I don't have $100,000, but you get the idea that it's going to be a convincing argument. Okay. And it has to be a something reasonably convincing, okay, that makes sense, this logical. And it's best to have three or four really good reasons of why it's important, because then you can get on board with your own problem. Now, here's the kind of crux of the issue here is, well, what are the key problems here? Or the challenges. Maybe limited research has been conducted in elementary school, so that might be a big challenge. Or the quality of research isn't that great. Or they haven't looked at Gen AI literacy. And there's lots of things that you can do, but that's where Notebook LM comes in because you can say, what are the key gaps? And then you can decide, well, what gaps do I want to address? And those gaps form your research purpose. So you reword those um, challenges and issues into a purpose statement. So I'll give you some examples below just so you can see what I'm looking for. This is a big ask. It will likely take you 3 to 4 hours if you're doing it right. You're digging in hard for this. Uh, but you will once you have a purpose, then you can really start to move forward. That doesn't mean that your purpose can't change because you may change as you look for more research, but this is sort of starting things out.